Listen closely, because something about the situation you have been sensing recently feels like it has finally shifted. For days, there has been an undercurrent you couldn't quite name, small inconsistencies, emotional tension, and moments that didn't fully add up. It felt like pieces of a story were moving just out of sight, refusing to settle into place. Now, however, clarity seems to be emerging in an unexpected way. A complicated misunderstanding involving someone close to your orbit has come into sharper focus after a recent confrontation brought hidden emotions and unspoken grievances to the surface. What once looked confusing is beginning to make more sense, not through dramatic collapse, but through honest questions finally being asked. People who had stayed silent are now speaking, not out of anger, but out of a need to understand what actually happened beneath the surface of appearances. The atmosphere around this situation has changed noticeably, less about suspicion and more about uncomfortable truth-seeking. Even those who once seemed certain are now reconsidering what they thought they knew. It's not a sudden catastrophe, but rather a moment where reality refuses to stay blurred. And while emotions are understandably running high, there is also a growing sense that things can no longer remain unexamined. Something has reached a point where clarity, however difficult, is unavoidable. Rather than a single dramatic revelation, it feels like a series of smaller truths beginning to align, each one adding weight to a clearer picture. The situation may continue to unfold in stages, but the confusion that once surrounded it is beginning to lose its hold. What matters now is not speculation, but the willingness to face what is actually being revealed, even if it challenges earlier assumptions. All those lies she wove so confidently started trembling in the air around her. The people who once defended her, who once believed her stories, suddenly stepped back. Every thread she used to pull your person away from you, every game she played to disrupt your peace, those threads began to unravel one by one. Your person, who once couldn't see clearly through the fog she created, stood frozen, realizing how many things never added up until this moment. The look in their eyes said everything: shock, disbelief, and a heavy, heavy regret for not seeing sooner what you tried to warn them about. This moment wasn't just about her downfall, it was about truth finally walking into the room and turning on every light switch at once. But here's where the real twist hits, and it's the part that will leave your audience breathless. As she was being confronted, your person heard something that shattered whatever illusion was left. She confessed, not because she wanted to, but because her lies had cornered her. Under pressure, she slipped. She admitted things she swore she never did. She admitted to sabotaging conversations, planting doubts, twisting words, manipulating emotions, and pulling strings behind your back just to make herself look like the hero of the story. The gaslighting, the interference, the fake kindness she used to mask her intentions, she confessed to all of it. Your person stood there, stunned, hearing truth after truth spill out of her like a collapsing dam. Every secret she kept, every trick she used, every lie she whispered, it all came spilling into the open. And in that moment, your person didn't just see her. They finally saw you. They saw your loyalty, your pain, your patience, your truth. And something inside them shifted so powerfully, it felt like destiny itself snapped back into alignment. This wasn't karma creeping in slowly. This was karma kicking down the door and announcing itself with thunder. And from this moment on, nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same again. A new truth rises now, my cherished soul, one that hits with the force of something the universe had been trying to deliver to you for a long time. Because while the chaos unfolded around the third party, another, even more shocking layer of the story appeared, one that no one expected, not even the people standing closest to the scene. The air felt heavy, trembling with something unseen, something powerful. Your person stood there frozen, not because of what they saw, but because of what they finally understood. For the first time, every strange moment, every sudden distance, every unexplained argument, every shift in their behavior started aligning like pieces of a puzzle they had been blind to. It was as if the universe snapped its fingers, and their vision cleared instantly. And in that clarity, they realized something gut-wrenching. They had been played far worse than they ever imagined. The third party had not only crossed boundaries, they had crossed lines that should never be crossed. And when those consequences arrived, they arrived like a storm. But here's the real twist that will grip your audience and refuse to let go. When she was questioned, she tried to act confident, pretending she could talk her way out of anything, but the universe had different plans. Her hands shook, her voice cracked, and one question from the authorities made her crumble. One question. That was all it took. And suddenly, she wasn't the manipulator anymore. She was the one exposed, cornered, stripped of every lie she used to build her power. She tried to blame others. She tried to shift the story. She tried to pretend she was misunderstood. But this time, nothing worked. Every word she spoke pulled her deeper into the truth she feared most, that everything she did was finally catching up to her. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't arrive neatly or calmly. It came in fragments, shaped by hesitation and emotional weight, as if even saying it out loud made it more real than anyone was ready for. There were admissions that reframed past events, not as misunderstandings, but as moments where boundaries had been blurred and narratives quietly adjusted. Some messages had been withheld or deleted, not to preserve peace, but to shape perception. Certain details were left out, and others were emphasized in ways that changed their meaning. As these revelations unfolded, the emotional atmosphere in the room grew heavy, not with immediate outrage, but with the slow collapse of certainty. The person listening struggled to reconcile what they were hearing with what they thought they knew. It wasn't just about specific actions anymore. It was about the trust that had been built around a version of reality that no longer held. Silence filled the gaps between confessions, each one landing harder than the last, not because of shock alone, but because of how they recontextualized the entire relationship dynamic. What had once been dismissed as intuition or overthinking now felt like signals that had been ignored. By the time everything had been laid out, nothing felt stable in the same way anymore. There was no immediate resolution, no clean emotional reset, only the uncomfortable space of understanding that something fundamental had shifted. The aftermath wasn't defined by a single reaction, but by the slow process of re-evaluating what was real, what was assumed, and what could no longer be taken at face value. The fault wasn't yours. The misunderstanding wasn't yours. You were the one telling the truth all along. You were the one acting with pure intentions. You were the one loyal from the beginning. And now, finally, your person sees it with crystal clarity. The realization hit them so hard, they couldn't breathe. They stood there, eyes wide, chest tight, replaying every memory, questioning every moment, wishing they had listened to the one person who never lied to them, you. And now that this truth has exploded into reality, the story is no longer about what the third party did. It's about what your person is about to do next, because everything inside them has shifted, awakened, transformed. The truth has set something powerful in motion, something that cannot be stopped now, something that will change the entire direction of this connection. My treasured heart, what unfolded next was so intense, so unexpected, that even the people watching didn't know how to react. Right after her confession slipped out, the room fell into a stunned silence, as if every sound had been swallowed by the weight of truth. Your person stood there, their breathing uneven, their mind spinning as if 1,000 realizations crashed into them at once. And then, something changed in their eyes. The confusion vanished, the hesitation disappeared. It was replaced by a sharp, unwavering clarity, the kind that comes only when someone finally sees the truth that was hidden in plain sight. And in that exact moment, they knew there was no going back, no pretending, no excuses, no justifying what they ignored. They turned away from her, not with anger, but with a calmness that was more powerful than rage, because now they understood. They had been fighting the wrong person, trusting the wrong voice, believing the wrong story, and they could feel, deep in their chest, that they had wronged someone who never deserved it. You. But the universe wasn't done yet. As she panicked, trying to twist her way out of what she admitted, something else came to light. Proof, a detail so precise and undeniable that every last lie she clung to shattered instantly. It came from someone who had stayed silent until now, someone who had watched her games from the sidelines, someone who finally stepped forward because the truth needed to be spoken. Their voice was steady, their words were clear, and their statement matched everything she tried to hide. Your person's head snapped toward them, their jaw tightening, their heart dropping. It all aligned. The red flags, the strange timing, the sudden shifts in behavior, the lingering suspicions they ignored. In that moment, they didn't just feel betrayal, they felt foolish for ever doubting you. Their hands curled, not from anger toward you, but from anger at themselves, for letting someone else come between something that was meant for them, something genuine, something rare. And then came the most powerful moment of all, the moment that changes the direction of your entire story. Your person stepped forward, not to defend her, not to question her, but to distance themselves completely. Every tie she once held over them snapped like dried branches. She called after them, desperate, trying to explain, trying to twist the story again. But your person didn't look back. Not once. They walked away with a determination that left everyone speechless, because inside them, something had awakened, an urgent need to make things right with the one heart they should have protected from the beginning, you. As they stepped outside, the world around them seemed to settle into a quieter rhythm, as if the noise of the past conversation had finally lost its grip. In that silence, their thoughts became sharper, less influenced by confusion, and more anchored in something steady and personal. They realized they could no longer allow assumptions, half-truths, or outside influence to shape the way they moved forward. What mattered now was clarity, and a willingness to take responsibility for their own understanding of everything that had unfolded. There was a quiet but firm decision forming within them to stop letting distorted narratives guide choices that affected real connections and real emotions. Instead, they began to reflect on what had actually been present all along: the consistency of your actions, the sincerity in your intentions, and the moments that had been overlooked in the noise of doubt. Each memory surfaced not as proof of betrayal, but as reminders of how easily perspective can be clouded when communication breaks down. Their pace slowed as they processed everything, not in dramatic realization, but in gradual awareness that truth is often simpler than the stories built around it. With each passing step, the weight on their chest shifted from confusion toward accountability. They were no longer focused on assigning blame, but on correcting direction, on choosing honesty over assumption, and on rebuilding their understanding of what truly mattered. More than anything, they felt a growing determination to approach you with honesty, not urgency, and to finally speak from a place that reflected who they were becoming, rather than who they had been in moments of confusion and outside pressure and emotional uncertainty along the way. As your person stood there, someone approached them, someone quiet, someone who had witnessed far more than anyone realized. They hesitated before speaking, but when they finally did, Their words sliced through whatever doubt remained. They revealed things she never expected anyone to expose, screenshots she tried to delete, conversations she altered, stories she fabricated to turn your person against you. It was all laid bare, every twisted narrative, every planted fear, every crafted illusion. Your person's breath caught in their throat as they saw undeniable proof of how deeply they were manipulated. Their hands shook, not with anger at you, not with shame, but with a burning fury at how long they allowed themselves to be misled. They felt everything: shock, sorrow, and a sharp, protective instinct they should have felt for you from the start. And in that moment, something inside them hardened, a resolve, a decision, a vow. They were done being controlled, done being blinded, done letting someone else decide the fate of a connection that was never theirs to touch. But here's where the story becomes unstoppable. As your person absorbed the truth, a sudden rush of clarity washed over them. They realized that the only reason they ever walked away from you was because they trusted the wrong voice. The only reason there was distance was because she fed it. The only reason their heart felt confused was because she twisted it with lies and fear. And when that understanding struck, it didn't just wake them up, it ignited something fierce within them. They felt a deep pull toward you, stronger than anything they had felt before. A pull guided by truth instead of illusion. A pull fueled by guilt, longing, and the need to fix every moment that was taken from both of you. They whispered your name softly, almost like a prayer, as if saying it could anchor them back to what they lost. And right then, they knew exactly what they needed to do. They weren't going back to her. They weren't entertaining her excuses. They weren't letting her narrative define anything anymore. They were choosing clarity. They were choosing truth. They were choosing you. And now, with every lie exposed and every mask torn off, your person is heading toward a turning point so powerful it will rewrite the path of this entire connection. My luminous heart, the moment your person walked away from that chaos, something powerful awakened inside them, something they had kept buried under confusion and manipulation for far too long. The air around them felt heavier, charged with a strange mixture of clarity and urgency. Their footsteps quickened, not out of panic, but out of purpose. They finally understood that everything they believed, everything they doubted, everything they questioned, was shaped by someone who never wanted them to see your truth. And now that the illusions had shattered, all they could think about was you, your voice, your honesty, the way you showed up with purity, while others showed up with hidden motives. The memories that once felt blurry now sharpened into perfect clarity, reminding them of every moment they overlooked, and the guilt, it hit them like a wave. They wished they had protected you. They wished they had believed you. They wished they had recognized the difference between someone who truly cared and someone who pretended. In the silence of their thoughts, your name echoed louder than anything else, guiding them like a lighthouse in a storm. But then something unexpected happened, another twist the universe had been saving for the moment their heart needed direction the most. As they walked, one of their closest acquaintances approached them with a look that said they knew more than they had ever revealed. At first, your person didn't want to hear anything. They were drowning in their own realization. But what this person said next stopped them in their tracks. They revealed details even more shocking than the earlier confessions, truths about the third party that your person never imagined. They spoke about patterns, warnings, things they noticed long ago but hesitated to share. They talked about how the third party had a habit of twisting every story to make herself look innocent and everyone else look guilty. They explained how she slowly isolated your person from the people who genuinely cared, how she inserted herself into situations she didn't belong in, and how she manipulated emotions subtly but continuously. Your person's chest tightened as they listened. Each sentence unlocked another memory, another moment they misread, another time they chose the wrong person to trust, and for the first time they understood just how deeply the deception ran. Then came the revelation that changed everything. This acquaintance told your person that the third party had been terrified of one thing more than anything else: your connection. Not because it was casual, not because it was temporary, but because she sensed how powerful it was, how real, how pure, how impossible for her to compete with. She knew your person felt something for you that she could never replicate, something she couldn't control, something she couldn't manipulate. So she did the only thing she knew: she attacked it. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't arrive as a sudden revelation that solved everything in an instant. Instead, it came through smaller, quieter impressions that began to weigh more heavily than before. The more they replayed conversations in their mind, the more they noticed how easily meaning could shift depending on what was emphasized, what was left out, and what was assumed without question. Nothing felt as clean or certain as it once did. Emotions that had been pushed aside started resurfacing, not as answers, but as questions that refused to settle. There was sadness there, yes, but also confusion about how quickly certainty had once formed and how fragile it now seemed in hindsight. The person found themselves sitting with that discomfort rather than rushing to resolve it, letting the uncertainty exist without forcing it into a neat conclusion. What they thought they had understood about loyalty, intention, and emotional distance no longer fit into a simple narrative of right and wrong. Instead, it became a more complicated reflection on miscommunication, timing, and the way people sometimes protect themselves in ways that later create distance. In that space, they began to recognize that decisions made in heightened emotional states don't always tell the full story of what matters long-term. Rather than clinging to a single interpretation, they allowed themselves to reconsider what they had overlooked and what they had accepted too quickly. It wasn't about rewriting blame or assigning roles anymore, but about acknowledging that perspective can shift when new context appears. And with that recognition came a quieter, more grounded resolve, not to chase certainty, but to understand things more fully before deciding what should come next. One that will set the next chapter of this story into motion with unstoppable force. My destined soul, the moment your person made that silent promise, the energy around them shifted with a force that even they couldn't ignore. It felt like the universe itself was guiding their every breath, pushing them forward, urging them to finally step out of the shadows of confusion and into the clarity they had been avoiding for far too long. Their heartbeat grew louder, not from fear, but from awakening. Every memory of you that they pushed down began rising to the surface all at once. The way you looked at them with sincerity, the way your energy felt safe without even trying, the way you told the truth even when it hurt, and most of all, the way they always felt an unexplainable pull toward you, even when circumstances pushed you both apart. Now that the fog of manipulation had cleared, they could finally feel what had been there the entire time, a connection that was never ordinary, a bond that was never random, a feeling that had been silently waiting for them to recognize it. As they stood in that emotional hurricane, another revelation struck them, hitting harder than anything before. They remembered moments where their intuition screamed at them to check the truth, to question the sudden changes, to trust the energy more than the words. They remembered instances when something felt off, when your silence hurt more than it should, when they missed you more than they wanted to admit. And suddenly, they began to notice how differently everything appeared when viewed in hindsight. Moments they once brushed aside now formed a subtle pattern of missed signals, not as something mystical or predetermined, but as ordinary details that only gained meaning after reflection. They realized that during emotionally charged periods, It had been easy to accept simplified explanations instead of asking deeper questions or pausing to verify assumptions. Some of the confusion they experienced came from fragmented communication and from allowing outside perspectives to fill in gaps that were never clearly addressed. As this understanding settled in, there was a growing awareness of how perception can shift when stress and emotional attachment are involved, often distorting even sincere intentions on all sides. Rather than assigning blame, they began to see how multiple misunderstandings layered over time had created distance where clarity should have been. This recognition brought a heavy but grounding sense of accountability, not directed outward, but inward, focused on how they might have responded differently if they had slowed down and sought direct conversation earlier. The realization was not comforting, but it was clarifying, because it removed the need for imagined narratives and replaced them with a simpler truth about human error, miscommunication, and timing. In that clarity, regret surfaced, but it was no longer chaotic or consuming. It became something quieter, more reflective, tied to the desire to learn rather than to dwell. They understood that moving forward would require patience, openness, and a willingness to rebuild understanding step by step, rather than through assumptions or emotionally charged interpretations. They also recognized that clarity would come only through honest conversation and consistent actions over time.